Chapter 1: A Tale of Two Patients. Hey, so I just started this incredible book, Super Agers, and you have to hear about how it kicks off. The author, Dr. Topol, introduces two of his patients, both 98 years old, and they couldn't be more different. It perfectly sets up the book's big idea. First, there's Mrs. L.R. Get this, at 98, she's completely healthy, lives alone, has a huge social network, and even drove herself to her appointment. The wild part is that her family had no history of long life. Her parents and siblings died decades younger. Her amazing health doesn't seem to be genetic. The author calls it a random stroke of good fortune. She's what we all dream of, breezing through life without any major diseases. Then there's Mr. R.P., also 98. His story is a total triumph of modern medicine. He's had bypass surgery, stents, procedures for an irregular heartbeat, and even survived COVID pneumonia at 96. He represents how we can fight back against age-related diseases to keep people going. So, the book isn't about some miracle pill. It's about making the second half of our lives healthier for everyone. Topol says we're on the cusp of a revolution, driven by the convergence of 5 key dimensions. First is Lifestyle Plus. This is way more than just diet and exercise. It includes things like being in nature, avoiding pollution, and the importance of social connections. Second is cells. We're getting so good at understanding our cells that we can engineer them, like turning our own T cells into cancer-fighting machines. Third is omics. This is all our personal biological data, our genome, proteins, even our gut microbiome, that helps define our unique health risks. Fourth is artificial intelligence, AI. AI is starting to pull all this data together to create personalized medical forecasts and coach us on preventing disease. And fifth is drugs and vaccines. We're discovering new drugs at an insane pace, like Ozempic, and the tech from COVID vaccines is being used to fight everything from cancer to autoimmune diseases. The book is all about how these 5 areas are coming together to change the future of aging. Chapter 2, It's in Your Genes? Okay, so the second chapter, It's in Your Genes, totally flips the script on what we think about aging. Dr. Topol talks about his own research project called Welderly, where they studied people over 80 who had never had a chronic illness. They sequenced their genomes, assuming they'd find some magic longevity gene. But here's the kicker, they were wrong. It turns out the DNA of these super healthy older folks wasn't that different from the rest of us. Their genetic risk for things like Alzheimer's or heart disease was only slightly lower. So, what was their secret? It wasn't in their genes. The research nurse noticed they were almost all thinner, exercised more, and were incredibly upbeat and social. So the study basically debunked the myth that our DNA is our destiny and pointed to other factors being way more important. He then contrasts the welderly with the elderly, which is most of us. The stats are pretty stark. In the US, 60% of adults have at least one chronic disease, and for people over 65, that jumps to 80% with 2 or more. The book's main argument is that we need to shift our focus from just extending lifespan to maximizing health span, the years we live in good health. The exciting part is how we get there. Topol says there's a historic convergence of breakthroughs happening right now, and the common thread connecting all the major age-related killers, heart disease, cancer, neurodegeneration, is the immune system and inflammation. Think about it, atherosclerosis is inflammation in your artery walls. A strong immune system can stop cancer from spreading, and brain diseases like Alzheimer's need inflammation to take hold. For the first time, we're developing tools to precisely manage this response. He gives some mind-blowing examples. We're talking about capsules, fecal transplants in a pill, to manage our gut microbiome for various conditions. There's CAR-T therapy, where they engineer your T cells into living drugs, which has already put patients with lupus into remission without needing lifelong drugs. We're also moving toward Diet 2.0, using AI to create personalized nutrition plans, and smarter, risk-based cancer screening instead of just age-based screening. It's a fundamental shift from treating sickness to proactively creating health. Chapter 3, Lifestyle Plus. After all that high-tech future stuff, the next chapter, Lifestyle Plus, brings it right back to what we can do today, and it's probably the most practical chapter in the book. Topol's argument is that we can add so many healthy years to our lives with the basics, but he's updated what the basics even means. He calls it Lifestyle Plus because the old definition of just diet, exercise, and sleep is outdated. His expanded view includes our environment, things like air pollution, loneliness, and even how much time we spend in nature. The section on diet is just wild. He kicks it off by saying a poor diet is linked to more global deaths than tobacco or hypertension. And the number one villain? Ultra-processed foods, UPFs. He calls them alien, industrially produced, unnatural substances. He cites an NIH study where people on a UPF diet naturally ate an extra 500 calories a day and gained weight, while an unprocessed group lost weight. Eating these foods is linked to a higher risk of basically everything bad: heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and dementia. So, what should we eat? The clear winner is the Mediterranean diet. It's backed by large-scale randomized trials showing it reduces the risk of death from cardiovascular disease, cancer, and neurodegenerative diseases. On exercise, he calls it the single most effective medical intervention that we know. But the key takeaway is that it's not just about cardio. Strength training is essential to fight age-related muscle loss, or sarcopenia. Studies show about 60 minutes a week is a great target to reduce all-cause mortality. He also emphasizes balance. The inability to stand on one leg for 10 seconds doubles your mortality risk. Then there's sleep. The sweet spot is about 7 hours a night. Both too little, less than 6 hours, and too much, greater than 8 hours, are linked to a higher risk of dementia and mortality. During sleep, our brain performs a brainwashing, clearing out toxic waste like the amyloid plaques linked to Alzheimer's. Finally, he covers the plus factors, like air pollution, which is a leading contributor to global disease, and microplastics and forever chemicals, PFAS, which are now being found in our arteries and brains. He wraps up by highlighting loneliness, which is as big a risk factor for premature death as smoking or obesity. Chapter 4, Obesity and Diabetes. Alright, you won't believe the story in this chapter on obesity and diabetes. It's all about the GLP-1 drugs, think Ozempic and Wegovy, and it's a total game changer. But the crazy part is that this breakthrough was sitting under our noses for over 20 years. These drugs mimic a natural gut hormone, and the first one was approved back in 2005 to treat diabetes. The big aha moment didn't come until 2021, when a trial tested a much higher dose on people with obesity but not diabetes. The results were stunning, an average weight loss of 15%. Novo Nordisk just rebranded the same drug from Ozempic to Wegovy for obesity. Topol makes a powerful point: we basically lost 20 years in public health by not figuring this out sooner. Imagine the millions who could have avoided the consequences of obesity: heart attacks, strokes, kidney failure, liver disease, dementia, even cancer. So how do they work? It's more than just weight loss. A huge part of their power comes from their profound anti-inflammatory effects. The fat tissue around our belly is a factory for inflammation, and these drugs calm that down throughout the body. They also work on the brain, changing signals for hunger and reward, which is why people on them often lose cravings for junk food, alcohol, and tobacco. The benefits are just staggering. They've been shown to reduce heart attacks and strokes by 20% in people with heart disease, dramatically improve symptoms for a common type of heart failure, protect the kidneys so effectively that one trial was stopped early, resolve dangerous scarring in fatty liver disease, MASH, show incredible promise in slowing the progression of Parkinson's disease, something no other drug has ever done. Of course, it's not all perfect. The side effects are mainly gastrointestinal, nausea, vomiting, though these usually fade. A bigger concern is the loss of muscle mass along with fat, which is why exercise is so important. And the biggest issues are that they seem to be forever drugs. If you stop, the weight comes back, and their astronomical cost is a massive problem. But even with those challenges, it's clear these drugs are one of the biggest leaps forward for health span we've ever seen. Chapter 5: Cardiovascular Disease. You'd think that with all the progress we've made, heart disease wouldn't be such a big deal anymore, right? Well, this chapter on cardiovascular disease was a reality check. Dr. Topol points out that after decades of decline, the death rate from heart disease has actually been creeping back up since 2019. It's still the #1 killer globally. The core of the problem is atherosclerosis, the buildup of plaque in our arteries. But the most important thing to understand is that this is not an old person's disease. The process starts incredibly early. A study found that 17% of teenagers already have the beginnings of it. It quietly incubates for decades, which means we have a massive window to prevent it. For years, prevention has been all about lowering bad LDL cholesterol with statins, which is effective. But Topol argues we need to look way beyond that, making a strong case that inflammation is a key culprit that we've been largely ignoring. A powerful AI model can now analyze a routine CT scan and detect inflammation in the heart arteries, which is a much better predictor of future heart attacks than blockages are. This opens the door to using cheap, old anti-inflammatory drugs like colchicine, which has been shown in multiple large trials to reduce cardiovascular events. The future of prevention, he argues, is all about precision medical forecasting. Instead of treating everyone the same, we need to build a comprehensive risk profile for each person using AI to integrate multiple layers of data. We're talking genetics, using polygenic risk scores to see if you have a high inherited risk. Biomarkers, looking at your gut microbiome, protein organ clocks, and blood markers of inflammation. Opportunistic AI, using AI to analyze images you already have, like a retina photo or chest X-ray, to accurately predict your heart artery calcium score without a separate scan. Once we identify someone as high risk decades early, we can put them under active surveillance and hit them with aggressive, personalized preventive strategies. It's a blueprint for actually preventing the #1 killer, instead of just waiting for it to strike. Chapter 6: Cancer. This chapter on cancer is absolutely riveting. Dr. Topol's main point is that our whole approach to cancer is stuck in the past, like we're still fighting a war on cancer that was declared in 1971. He argues we need to stop that metaphor and see cancer for what it is, a biological process that unfolds over years, even decades, and a process that we can intelligently intercept. The most mind-blowing concept is the evolution of cancer. It starts with a single cell that acquires driver mutations and then evolves over a very long time before it's ever diagnosed. This long, slow road gives us a huge window to detect it when it's just a tiny, precancerous whisper, long before it metastasizes, which is what actually makes cancer so deadly. This is why he says our current one-size-fits-all screening methods based on age are so broken. They miss the alarming rise in cancers among young people and lead to tons of false positives. The path forward is risk-stratified prevention, using AI to create a personalized cancer risk profile for everyone by integrating all their data. High-risk people would then get active surveillance with cutting-edge tools. The most exciting of these are liquid biopsies, simple blood tests that can detect tiny fragments of tumor DNA. The most advanced ones, like the Gallery test, use AI to not only detect a cancer signal but also predict which organ it's coming from. Then he gets into treatments, and it's like science fiction. We're moving way beyond chemo. The new era is about empowering our own immune system. The big players are antibody drug conjugates, ADCs. He calls these biological missiles. They are antibodies that deliver chemo directly to cancer cells, sparing healthy ones, and they're having unprecedented success. Personalized cancer vaccines. Using the same mRNA tech from COVID vaccines, companies can create a vaccine customized to your tumor's mutations. A trial for melanoma showed this approach dramatically improved outcomes. CAR T-cell therapy. Doctors take your T-cells, engineer them into superpowered cancer killers, and infuse them back into you as a living drug. It's already curing some blood cancers and is now showing incredible promise for solid tumors, even aggressive brain tumors. It's a totally new, highly personalized approach to prevention and cure. Chapter 7, Neurodegeneration. This chapter on neurodegeneration is both humbling and incredibly hopeful. For over a century, the dogma was that the brain was immune-privileged, sealed off from the rest of the body's immune system. But Topol explains that this is completely wrong. We now know the brain has its own lymphatic drainage system and that immune cells are constantly patrolling it. This discovery has revolutionized our understanding of diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. The central idea is that neuroinflammation, an immune response in the brain, is a critical driver of these conditions. 4. Alzheimer's disease. The classic story has been about two toxic proteins, beta amyloid and tau, that build up into plaques and tangles. The new thinking is that this buildup triggers a chronic immune response that does much of the damage. The biggest breakthrough here has been in diagnostics. We used to need expensive and invasive PET scans to see these proteins. Now, we have a simple blood test for a protein called p-tau217 that is incredibly accurate at identifying Alzheimer's pathology, even better than a neurologist's assessment. The new anti-amyloid antibody drugs like Leqembi and donanemab have gotten a lot of press, but their clinical benefit has been modest, only slowing cognitive decline by a few months while carrying significant side effects. 4. Parkinson's disease. The story involves the buildup of a different protein, alpha-synuclein, and significant neuroinflammation. A fascinating insight is the powerful gut-brain connection. Many patients have gut symptoms for decades before motor symptoms appear, and there's evidence the toxic protein may travel from the gut to the brain. This opens up new avenues for treatment like fecal transplants. The most exciting news for Parkinson's is the consistent benefit seen in trials of the GLP-1 drugs, like Ozempic, which appear to stop the progression of motor symptoms, a truly disease-modifying effect we've never had before. The ultimate goal is prevention. Topol outlines a future where we identify high-risk individuals early using a combination of blood tests, genetics, and AI analysis of retinal photos, then intervene with aggressive lifestyle modifications and perhaps even future Alzheimer's vaccines. Chapter 8, Curing Rare Diseases. At first, a chapter on rare diseases might seem out of place in a book about aging, but Topol makes a brilliant case for why it's so important. The punchline is this: the cutting-edge technologies being developed to cure rare genetic diseases are the very same tools that will be used to treat common, age-related diseases. The star of this chapter is, without a doubt, CRISPR genome editing. He explains that for billions of years, bacteria have used this system as their personal immune defense. In 2012, scientists figured out how to harness this system, using a guide RNA to direct molecular scissors to a precise spot in our DNA. The first generation of this tech was a bit like a sledgehammer, making a double-stranded break in the DNA. But now we have much more precise tools like base editing and prime editing. David Liu, a pioneer in the field, likened it to a word processor that can find and replace a single typo in a 3 billion letter book. This isn't science fiction anymore. In late 2023, regulators in the UK and US approved the very first CRISPR-based cure for sickle cell anemia. It works by editing a patient's own blood stem cells outside the body and then reinfusing them. But the real future is one-shot, in vivo editing, where the editing machinery is injected directly into the body to fix cells where they live. This is already happening in clinical trials. He describes a trial by Verve Therapeutics that uses a single infusion of a base editor to permanently turn off the PCSK9 gene in the liver, durably lowering bad cholesterol. This was first developed for a rare disorder but could one day be used to prevent heart attacks in millions. He also explains the difference between gene editing and gene therapy. Gene therapy adds a new copy of a gene, while editing actually fixes the faulty one. Of course, there are major challenges. Safety is a huge concern. We have to be sure we're not making unintended off-target edits or, even worse, creating edits in eggs or sperm that could be passed down for generations. The other massive hurdle is accessibility. The first approved CRISPR therapy costs over $2 million per patient, which raises profound ethical and equity questions. Chapter 9: Controlling Our Immune System. Okay, this chapter is where everything starts to click into place. Topol argues that one of the most important breakthroughs for extending health span is our newfound ability to control our own immune system. This is crucial for the 80 different autoimmune diseases, like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, that affect more than 10% of the population. For decades, the only treatments have been broad immunosuppressant drugs that are like using a sledgehammer. Now, we're seeing the first real hope for a cure by achieving immune tolerance, essentially, reteaching the immune system not to attack its own tissues. Several incredible strategies are emerging. One of the most promising is what he calls inverse vaccines. Instead of revving up the immune system, these vaccines deliver a specific self-antigen in a way that tells the T cells to stand down. This has shown stunning success in animal models of MS and rheumatoid arthritis and is now moving into human trials. Another mind-blowing approach uses the same CAR T-cell engineering from the cancer chapter, but in reverse. The results have been nothing short of miraculous. He describes a study where patients with severe lupus, who had failed all other treatments, were given a single infusion of CAR T-cells that targeted their rogue B cells. They went into a deep, drug-free remission that has now lasted for years. He also dives into the gut microbiome's role, explaining how an unhealthy gut can disrupt the immune system and how we might soon use precisely targeted probiotics to restore balance. 4. Type 1 diabetes, where the immune system destroys insulin-producing cells, we're seeing a multi-pronged attack. The first ever drug to prevent the disease, teplizumab, was recently approved. It works by exhausting the T cells that cause the damage, delaying the onset of the disease by years. This is seen as a bridge to a cure, with research now focused on combining this with strategies to regrow the lost cells. The final frontier he touches on is xenotransplantation, transplanting organs from pigs into humans. The main barrier has always been immune rejection, but now, using CRISPR, scientists can make dozens of edits to a pig's genome to make its organs look more human to our immune system, with the first successful transplants already happening. It's an incredible look at how we're learning to dial our most powerful defense system up or down on demand. Chapter 10: Defeating Infectious Agents. This chapter feels like a thriller, recounting the story of the COVID-19 pandemic and the scientific miracle that saved us. Topol reminds us just how dire things were in early 2020, with experts predicting a vaccine might take 18 months, if we were lucky. That was considered wildly optimistic, since the average vaccine takes 8 to 10 years to develop. As we know, we got highly effective vaccines in just 10 months. How? Topol explains it was the result of breakthroughs that had been decades in the making. 1. mRNA technology. For 30 years, scientists had been working on using mRNA to turn our bodies into vaccine factories. A key discovery in 2005 made it safe for use in humans. 2. Structure-based design. Scientists had spent years mapping the atomic structure of related coronavirus spike proteins. They had already figured out that making 2 specific amino acid substitutions would stabilize the spike protein and generate a much stronger immune response. This knowledge was incorporated into the vaccine's design just one day after the virus's genome was sequenced. 3. Operation Warp Speed. the US government made an unprecedented $12 billion investment to manufacture vaccines at scale before trials were even finished, saving crucial months. This success has supercharged vaccine development for other diseases. We're now seeing new, highly effective vaccines for RSV, a virus that took 67 years to conquer. And the mRNA platform is now being aimed at the big three: malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV. The second half of the chapter tackles the next great threat: antimicrobial resistance, AMR. This is the terrifying prospect of a post-antibiotic era where common infections become deadly again. The pipeline for new antibiotics has been dry for decades. But here again, technology is coming to the rescue. Academic labs are using AI and deep learning to screen hundreds of millions of molecules to find brand new classes of antibiotics. In one case, AI discovered a powerful antibiotic, halicin, from a drug that had originally failed for diabetes. Finally, he discusses the comeback of an old idea: phage therapy. Phages are viruses that exclusively infect and kill bacteria. They are now being used as a last resort to treat life-threatening, multi-drug resistant infections with remarkable success. Chapter 11, Promoting Mental Health. This chapter on mental health is such an important addition, because, as Topol says, you can't really extend your health span without addressing your mental well-being. The two are completely interdependent. And the need is urgent. He cites stats showing that more than 1 in 5 Americans suffers from mental illness, and a quarter of them can't get the care they need. So, what's the path forward? It's not just about more drugs or therapy. The most powerful section of this chapter focuses on the evidence-based, non-pharmacological ways to boost our mental health. First, and this is a big one, is spending time in nature. He's not just talking about feeling good. He cites huge studies showing that people who spend at least 120 minutes a week in green spaces have significantly lower rates of depression and anxiety, lower blood pressure, and better sleep. It's so well established that there's now something called a nature score that uses satellite imagery to rate the naturalness of any neighborhood. Second is the power of music. This is moving beyond just a hobby and into a real field of medicine. Studies are showing that music can reduce chronic pain, alleviate anxiety, and improve vascular function. Third is human connection. He talks about the epidemic of loneliness, which is linked to a higher risk of premature death, on par with smoking. He shares a touching story of one of his 98-year-old patients who overcame a deep depression after her husband's death by moving to a senior residence and finding a new community. Of course, the basics like diet, exercise, and sleep are fundamental for mental health, too. A healthy, anti-inflammatory Mediterranean diet is linked to over a 30% reduction in depression. And exercise is a powerhouse, with one analysis showing it can be even more effective than medication for depression. The chapter ends by looking at how technology is trying to fill the provider gap. The most interesting development is the rise of AI chatbots. He discusses apps like Wobot, which use principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, to provide 24/7 support. Randomized trials are starting to show that these chatbots can significantly reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety, providing an accessible first line of support for the millions who currently have none. Chapter 12, Changing Aging. This chapter, Changing Aging, dives headfirst into the wild, often overhyped world of longevity science. Topol calls it the longevity lifespan circus, talking about rejuvenation Olympics and tech millionaires taking over 100 pills a day. His goal here is to separate the science from the pseudoscience. He makes a crucial distinction right away. Most of this book is about extending health span by preventing specific diseases. This chapter is about the much bigger, more audacious goal: slowing or reversing the fundamental aging process itself. To understand how this might be possible, he walks through the hallmarks of aging, the biological blueprint of what goes wrong as we get older. The key hallmarks include genomic instability, the shortening of our chromosome tips, telomeres, the accumulation of zombie senescent cells, and the exhaustion of our stem cells. The really exciting part is that scientists are now developing interventions to target each of these hallmarks. The most mind-blowing research is in epigenetic reprogramming. He talks about the work of scientists who discovered that by transiently activating 4 proteins known as the Yamanaka factors, they could reset the epigenetic clock of old cells, making them biologically younger. This has been shown to rejuvenate tissues in mice and has attracted billions in funding from tech billionaires at places like Altos Labs. He also discusses the science behind getting rid of those senescent zombie cells with drugs called senolytics. Early human trials are showing they can improve conditions like diabetic kidney disease and even show promise for Alzheimer's. And then there's the buzz around young blood. For years, experiments have shown that connecting the circulatory systems of an old mouse and a young mouse rejuvenates the old mouse's tissues. While human trials are still unproven, scientists are now isolating specific factors in young blood that seem to mediate these effects. Finally, he looks at the biological clocks that measure our aging process. Epigenetic clocks, like the Grimm age clock, analyze DNA patterns to estimate your biological age. A newer, more useful approach is measuring organ-specific clocks using thousands of proteins in the blood. This can tell you if your heart is aging faster than your brain, opening the door for truly personalized interventions. While he cautions that much of this is very early, the chapter leaves you with the feeling that we are, for the first time, beginning to get a handle on the levers of aging itself. Chapter 13, The Path Forward. So, in the final chapter, The Path Forward, Dr. Topol brings everything together and gives his honest take on where we're headed. It's a powerful mix of incredible optimism and some very stark warnings. He starts by circling back to his 2 98-year-old patients. He uses them to frame the central question: will our future be about getting lucky, or can we systematically build a long health span for everyone? His answer is clear. Trying to directly reverse the body's entire aging process is the ultimate moonshot, but it's fraught with challenges and is still a long way off. A huge danger is that many of the biological hallmarks of aging are the exact same as the hallmarks of cancer. He's also skeptical of the compression of morbidity idea, that we'll all live perfectly healthy and then just drop dead peacefully at 100. There's very little evidence to support this fantasy right now. Instead, he argues that the most realistic and attainable path forward is to aggressively prevent or markedly delay the major age-related diseases. The key to this is a concept he calls precision medical forecasting. This is where the convergence of all the technologies he's discussed comes into play. By using multimodal AI to integrate all of an individual's data, their genomics, blood proteins, organ clocks, liquid biopsies, and lifestyle factors, we can gain an unprecedented ability to identify who is at high risk for a specific disease, decades before it manifests. It's about extinguishing the disease before it even has a chance to start. He sees the immune system as the master key to all of this. He advocates for the development of a comprehensive immunome test that would become a routine part of our checkups. This would go way beyond a simple white blood cell count to give us a detailed picture of our immune health, predicting our vulnerability to infections, cancer, and chronic inflammatory diseases. But he ends with 2 major obstacles that could derail all this progress. First is profound health inequity. If these life-changing technologies are only available to the wealthy, they will just make societal divides even worse. Second is the anti-science movement. The spread of misinformation and conspiracy theories threatens the public's trust and acceptance of these momentous discoveries. Ultimately, though, his message is one of excitement. He believes we're on the verge of a new era. The breakthroughs are here or just around the corner, and they hold the promise of helping us all become super Agers.